And we are live. I love it. And we have the scribe back with us tonight. We're live on YouTube. Sonjedi, can you add a little bit more light to your face? Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. We have an amazing topic for tonight. And we have a Tuesday Talk favorite back with us, the Scribe Sonjedi. People love it when he's here. Come on in, everyone. Thank you for participating. When you come in, let me know where you are. Where in the world are you? Ankh and Ma'at Tahuti. Ankh and Ma'at. Come on in. Ankh and Ma'at Waret Kamut Parata Clan. I love it when I see new people. And when we have people who are here to learn. I got a little foot heater on, you guys. It's cold in New York. I'm in New York City right now. And it's cold. And it was wet snow, which is in between wet, heavy snow and sleet. And if you live in the Northeast, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's just different ways to say snow. I was speaking to my mom, and there's fluffy snow. Fluffy snow. Anka Ma'at, Sanet Amara. She is a member of the Shrine of Ma'at. We have Edmond, Oklahoma in the house. I think that's our first Oklahoma. Thank you. We have Kepra Ankh Natur from Houston, Texas, Queen Mother. Was that for little old me? Thank you, Dua. Ankh and Ma'at Sen Curtis. He is a member of the Shrine of Ma'at in Painesville, Ohio, via Pittsburgh. We have Sanette Cortia. She's a member of the Shrine of Ma'at. We have Zawena Salim in New York City. Welcome. Great. We have Waret. She's a member of the Temple of Anu, our sister shrine. I was talking about the Temple of Anu tonight with my mom when I was telling her about Sonjedi and what he teaches and what he knows and stuff like that. So we were just talking about that tonight, about the Temple of Anu. We have Anitra Ankama Atsanat, Ra Kasashen, and also Parada clan, I'm assuming from the Temple of Anu. Come on in, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we have a Tuesday Talk favorite with the Scribe Sonjedi. What does a scribe do? Among other things, teaching the language, teaching the Medu Neter. And I was talking to my mom about what we're doing tonight and, about Sonjedi. And I was saying, he teaches the Medu Neter. And when he studied it and he knows it and he teaches it. And so when you know that particular language, what it is of the culture, they were writing about the culture. So the more you study the language, the more you study the culture, and the more you know of the culture, and you know more about it in a very wide and deep way. And so we're going to be talking about food tonight. So this is what I was saying, with my mom about my guest for this evening. So we've got so many people here who are regulars. We've got new people. I see Connecticut in the house. That's where I'm from. Trinidad and Tobago's in the house. So we are going to get started with our Tuesday Talk for this evening. And the title is, What is Food and Why Do We Need It? So without further ado, Sonjedi, Ankh and welcome.
Okay, Octan. Okay. How you feeling? Thank you for having me. I appreciate that. It's always great to share with the family. With the Shrine of Ma'at. Here representing the Temple of Anu, representing the Ari Nefer clan in the house. Okay. Um, Shout out to my clan members, Shemset Ra and Mensa Ra. Both are terrific individuals, very talented, skilled, and I'm lucky to have them as my big brother, and my big sister. Um, Shout out to the head of the Temple of Anu, Nisu Biti Rasanku Kepper, and the Hemet Netcher of the uh, Temple of Anu, Hemet Netcher and Bar Ma'at. Shout out to my wife, Kaika, who supports me in everything that I do. Uh, and she puts up with me, so that's a that's a blessing on my part. Um, Shout out to my children, my two daughters. Uh, they keep me motivated. Uh, shout out to shout out to the Elay, OIDSI, Babalawa, Obafemi Fayemi Pega. And shout out to all of my teachers, Infukisha Juhudi Meskat and Haru Hassan Kamal Salim. Shout out to Sibat Raketi Amen. Shout out to the great ancestor, the great world scribe, Ankh Mira, my first Metanetra instructor, to whom, I owe much of my knowledge to. And I could not be where I am without, him showing me the way. And if I can have a fraction of his knowledge, I might be great.
Mm.
All right. So you say, what is a scribe? So we know that that term is sesh. Okay. And of course, we're using Egyptology speak. So sesh, it means as a verb to trace. So that's the basic meaning, to trace. And then, of course, to write, to draw, to design, to paint, to inscribe. And your seshu or sesha ut, okay, that's the scribesses. So you have the scribes and scribesses. These are your literary griots, if you will. Mm-hmm. So in West Africa, we have the griots who carry on the oral tradition. They tell the stories. They do it through music or poetry, etc. In Kemet, they have the same thing. And the sesh, I call them the literary griots, because the wise men and women in Kemet, the vast majority of them were scribes. So when you think about those priests, the second and third priests of Amen, etc., they were scribes. Ptah-hotep, these were statesmen and women, senators, if you will. Because even the word senator is a word meaning elder. So they were your seba, sebau, sebaut. Okay. In fact, the word scholar, scholar, school, scholastic, it has the same base meaning as the word seba. So your scholar is your seba because it has the same meaning, if you will. Mm-hmm. So a scholar is supposed to have scholastic moral, scholastic honesty, things like that, a certain level of objectivity and wisdom. So among us, we have our sebas among us. All right. And it takes years in order to get there. And it's not something you call yourself. It's something that the community deems you worthy to be such. Same thing with the scribe. A scribe or a sesh, you had to have been proven. You can't just say, well, I'm a scribe out of nowhere. Who deemed that to you? Right. Did you demonstrate, your skill in the language, and in the writing, etc.? And I could tell you, by all means, I am not the most skilled person in the world. I'm not. I'm still learning a lot. I still get a lot of stimuli from just studying the text. So And we already know the more you learn, the more you realize how much you really don't know. So, so tonight we're going to discuss food. And I know that's a simple thing. And then segueing into the ritual, how it goes into ritual. And in this presentation, I'm going to hit bullet points. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on one part because this is part of a larger discussion. So other presentations here and on my upcoming channel, my upcoming YouTube channel, I'll be expanding more. So this presentation, I'm going to hit like bullet points. Okay. So basically they're like headings, from the different chapters. I'm just elaborating a little bit. And I know there was some request for a prayer for food. I think, that was passed on. So I did work on that, and it will be an adaptation. So that'll be my gift to everyone here. All right. Let's get into the share mode. Present. Share screen. Windows. I'm so glad I got a lot better at this. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Let me go back here, and here we go. There we go.
What do you see?
African practice of food offerings, Kemetic Focus.
Okay. Brief introduction. So again, this is part of a larger discussion. So this is hitting bullet points. And what we're going to do is we're going to start from the biological, then we'll go into the ritualistic, because everything does start from what you were physically doing. And what you're physically doing and physically engaged in is what becomes symbols later. Okay? So now when you look at the background, this is the tomb of Nakhet or Nakhet and his wife Tawi. So Nakhet and tomb of Nakhet and Tawi. So whenever we mention these tombs, what I like to do is if the person has a spouse, I like to mention the spouse as well, because that spouse is represented in the tomb as well. So it belongs to that spouse as well. So this is the tomb of Nakhet and Tawi, his wife. All right, so here's some contents. Here are the bullet points. So we're going to start off with the biological basis of food. Keep it simple. We're going to talk a little bit about modes of food production, then food as a basis of culture, and then a little bit of ritual and ceremony. So what is food and why do we need it? Ergo, the title of this presentation. What I want you to do, I want you to look at the partial image you see on the right. This comes from the tomb of Mena. So we see right here, it appears to be either egg or bread right here up top left. And of course, obviously you see the fish, you see the birds, you see containers, baskets filled with food and spices, which is very common actually throughout Africa to arrange foods and spices in bowls and baskets like a banquet. You also see vessels here for liquids, waters, juices, beers, wines, etc. So I want you to keep that image in mind because we want to see some real life images of that. All right, so let's go to the biological. Okay. So, of course, it's taken from one of a biology text. So, food in natural order. Okay. So, all cells must take in oxygen and food molecules through their plasma membranes to power the metabolism, growth, and repair of the internal cell structures. Okay. Some of us may or may not have been into this since, high school or even college. But remember, this is the basis of how we are processing what we're calling food, how we're processing materials that we need in order to metabolize, grow, and really live. All right. Your concept of Ankh, if you will. Life utilizes energy. This we know. Life utilizes energy. All organisms require energy and produce waste products. Food energy is used to maintain the internal order and growth. Food provides nutrients that are used as building blocks or for energy. All right, so why are we highlighting this here? We know food energy is used to maintain internal order and growth. Order, keyword, internal order. So the internal order is about ma'at. Remember, ma'at is what? Order, that which is straight, balance, symmetry, if you will. So we know inside of our body, ma'at, which is the natural order, is always at work. Your body is always doing things, compensating to maintain what's called homeostasis. Homeostasis is where you want to keep things balanced. So your body itself is the epitome, is the embodiment of the workings of ma'at and how ma'at operates. So you have to have an internal order and growth and proliferation. In order to do that, you have to provide it with substances that your body does not manufacture on its own. So you have to get it from an outside source. So when we look at our diagrams on the right, little chemistry at the top, glucose plus oxygen, energy is released, so that we can move and think, etc. Carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide you breathe out. Okay, you exhale that, and of course, water when you're sweating, etc. So this oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange through your pulmonary system. All right, this is Ankh. So the latest research on Ankh is that it's more about how you're breathing, because you can barely go a few minutes without oxygen. In fact, whenever you're unconscious or there's an accident or something like that, you're losing blood, we know that in the EMT world, according to the training and schooling that I've gone through, for every minute that your brain is without oxygen, there's a 10% less chance of a full recovery. So this is how important oxygen is. Now, of course, when it comes to the Ankh, we espouse that it has more so to do with the reproductive system. Yes, life does have to do with that. But you can go your entire life without reproducing, technically. But how long can you go without oxygen? So in this case, we utilize the Ankh in a sense of breathing and respiration. You have to properly breathe. We do this through meditation, etc. Focusing on your breathing. Make sure you don't have any blockages so that you can get all the oxygen possible so that your respiration and all of your cells can operate properly. Now we go to the bottom, cellular respiration. So we see cycles. So we know Ra, so see light energy. Ra gives us light energy. More specifically, of course, to our skin, but plants through their chloroplasts, again, we'll get into that biological details, is what processes the sunlight, makes the plants grow. And we already know that when we go into the mythology of Ra, Ra is the progenitor of life. Ra is the force that initiates life. And then we also have the Nun. So the Nun is where the sun grows out of. So we go into mythology, the Nun, the great waters, etc., the flood, and they're associated with each other. But we already know from biology and chemistry that if you take a glass of water and set it out in sunlight, what will start to happen? You will start to see some fuzzy green stuff start growing inside, correct? So it's Ra together with the Nun that creates life, that creates the plant life that you see there. So then the plants start to process the sun, and then we eat the plants for our food, so that to feed ourselves. And of course, we'll eat fish and other animals and things like that, grains, et cetera, and then we give out what? Carbon dioxide and water, in which the plants consume, and it is a consistent cycle of the natural order, which is what? Ma'at, that which is straight, orderly, which means the law. So what we're talking about here, this is natural law that occurs. So keep that in mind. So now let's go to a little bit of history here. So hit this bullet point. So the late archaic Homo sapiens populations were most likely tribal wanderers who exploited a wide range of food sources. The most likely required that they range seasonally over vast territories. So most biologists, anthropologists, etc., would agree, and evidence demonstrates our earliest ancestors, of course, at least starting with the what they call archaic Homo sapiens, who are African people. They were hunters and gatherers. Went out there and got food. They gathered plants, etc., berries. In fact, some research suggests that primarily, not exclusively, but primarily, men were the ones who hunted, and women did more of the gathering, etc., and they worked together as a collective unit of food production. So over time, as food supplies become more reliable, the lifestyle became more stable and easier to bear. In turn, a safer, more stable, and longer life permitted humans more opportunity to develop their intellectual side. So here's something. Most, if not each, civilization that ever sprung up on Earth always sprung up around water. Why water? Because water is your what? Your supply. Because we have to have water. In fact, you can live over a month. I don't remember the exact time, but it's definitely over a month. You can live over a month without food, but you could barely live a week without water. So first we have what? Air, which contains oxygen, nitrogen, and other elements necessary for you to breathe. But primarily you need that oxygen. And then after oxygen, the next most important thing for you to have is water. So you see now how we're building this up. We're building this up. These are things necessary for life. So these civilizations that spring up around water, lakes, especially rivers. River water is usually healthier than lake water or swamp water, of course, and even more healthier than ocean water. So make sure you look up why you should not drink ocean water. You can drink river water. Of course, you want to clean it, but you do not want to drink ocean water. Somebody look that up. That's your assignment. It is said that it is the eating of fish that more than likely catapulted our brain development forward. Because what does fish have? Fish and sea vegetables. Many of us who are vegan, vegetarians, etc., or at least incorporate that into our diet, are familiar with sea vegetables like hijiki, seaweed, etc. Many of us eat fish. What does it provide? Omega fatty acids, which we need for our brains. So there's certain types of fats we have to have for our brains to function. Our nervous system needs fat in order to operate, in order to have the proper lubrication, so that what's called action potentials or electrical impulses to move smoothly across the nerves. So with the eating of fish, i.e. the Happy River, the Niger River, etc., um, the rivers in Central Africa, um, when they call the Green Sahara, etc., those lakes and rivers in Southern Africa. So we're eating sea vegetables and things and providing our brains with omega 3, omega 6s, these very important fatty acids for our brain development, which then gives us the tools and mechanisms and the internal environment to intellectualize development of society, how to make tools, how to make things more efficient for ourselves. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about this briefly. So now we have to have food. So now as time goes on from our earliest ancestors, we are figuring out what are the best ways to acquire food and how to reproduce the same results of acquiring food. So foraging, we know that this is where you're doing a lot of planting. You're planting, you're doing some gathering, etc., but in a limited space with a limited population. So that's foraging. Then when you get into horticulture, uh, this is where you're doing something similar as foraging, but you probably have some little hunting in there, expanding more, and then you have pastoralism. Pastoralism is where you are following the herd of animals, the herd of animals. So uh, you're gathering them together, following them. You may use them for milk, etc. Like in the next slide, we'll take a look at that. Uh, you could use them for meat. You could eat what they eat. You know, if they're not eating grass, because we don't really have the stomachs to eat grass. Um, so a wide range of things that can happen with pastoralism, and you're constantly moving. So this is one of the reasons that drove our earliest ancestors to migrate to such distances, uh, because of pastoralism. And then, of course, you have famine, you have desertification, um, you can have wars, conflicts that can make people move about so much. Agriculture, this is where you are you're planting, but you are digging up the ground, you're planting seeds, you're using livestock, you're using the muscles and strength of animals to help you plant foods in 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 large structured enterprises. So it's wider than just horticulture. Now you have a wider system. So you're using the ground more and you're replanting according to the seasons, etc. And of course, today we have industrialism. Industrialism, making food on large scale factories, etc. We're not going to get into that, but these are the primary modes of food production. So I just want to mention these are some of my people here. I'm partially Fube or Fulani. So I actually missed a Coptic term there, which is Won. Actually, should say Won.
Wow.
So the Fube or Fulani, they're primarily a pastoralist African society. So they spread throughout many parts of the African continent, from West Africa along the Atlantic coast to Lake Chad and to East Africa. So, we always like to do language comparisons. So this is just a quick one here. So in Rodney Kemet or Medu Neter, you have this term wenim, verb meaning to eat or to consume, and then as a noun it means food. So wenimu, okay, and we're using Egyptology speak here. Now Coptic, it's won, okay, won. So we can see that, or at least hear that the M drop from Coptic. Now in Fulfulde, that's how you say if you want to say Fulani language, you say Fulfulde. So the people is Fulbe, and the language is Fulfulde. So you have what's called metathesis. Metathesis is where consonants switch places whenever a dialect forms, etc. And then it could break off to another language. So we can see it's a switch between the N and the M. Same word. So it's nyam, inyam, and it means food to eat. Same meaning. So I just want to give you that tidbit there. So you can see they are with the herd. This is their lifestyle. From what I've learned, they don't eat the cows, but they consume the milk. And then, of course, they go to the marketplace to trade livestock for other things, for better stock, or for money, or for other necessities, clothing, etc. And in the future, I'll talk about the relationship between the Fulani or Fulbe with ancient Kemetic people via the language and even the quote unquote the spiritual tradition and the mythology and how they're connected, and be pulling from some very important African scholars to help support this relationship. So, I really like images. So here we see some Ethiopian food being shared. Most of us here have had Ethiopian food. I had Ethiopian food earlier. I got down with the cuisine. Had me some red lentils, some yellow peas, some injera, some greens. So as you can see, if you see the plate, it's circular. So the circular plate is meant to promote communal eating.
That's right.
See, so this is traditional, and the more and more I look, the more that I'm finding this across the continent. Of course, many others have seen and realized this way before me, but I really enjoy having this. I'm gonna call it a journey of self-discovery, seeing these connections, and you can see how the practice of sharing and feeding each other.
That's right. Sharing.
That you're feeding and sharing, and our brother Asar Imhotep has spoke about how Ma'at is really about open-handed sharing, which is order, sharing resources. So when you feed your child, you are what? You are giving food, you're giving resources, which is part of what we spoke about earlier. Natural what? Order. So the acquisition of food is the natural order, and the providing of food is the natural order. Okay. This here is in West Africa. I think this is Senegal. So you can see circular, communal eating together. Now this is in Egypt. This one's from Egypt. Again, communal eating, circular plates.
Do you know what that is, Sonjedi?
It's a type of grain. I've seen pictures of Egyptians. When I say Egyptians, I'm still meaning Kemetic people, and even Sudanese take large bits of bread, and they're cooking it on top of rocks or small boulders, if you will, and they put in it, and it lays all around the rock or a small boulder, and then they take it off, and it's really big. So that's what that probably is. Similar to like injera bread, injera like a strong pita type of bread. Okay. So you may recognize the colors. Oshun, Ibashi Oshun. She has the food. Now we know that throughout the continent, the giving of food and offering. So now we go from providing for yourself, you're eating food yourself. Uh, you are sharing your food with your children, your spouses, your community, etc. And you give food to your ancestors as well. So remember, because a person becomes an ancestor, you don't stop feeding that person. You keep
That's right.
feeding. Okay. And we can even posit that the worship or honoring of what we call God actually evolves from the worship and honoring of ancestors. So
Mm-hmm.
it in the natural evolution of things, ancestor veneration, communication, worship, honoring, and feeding comes before the worshiping, honoring, feeding of God, which makes more sense because we know that God, the creator, nature, Olodumare, etc., Ama is our oldest ancestor. The creator is our oldest ancestor. Okay. So from the ancestor, John Smbidi, he says this. In many parts of Africa, adult members of the family, and especially the heads of families, pour out beer, water, milk, or some other beverage. Now, brother and sister, we know we already do that in our hoods. So that's a karaoke. We still doing it.
We do.
And other beverages on the ground for the spirits of the family. They may also put bits of food on the ground for the same purpose. So typically we think about pouring water. Okay. Now, pouring water is like feeding plants. We'll get back to that after this. In many countries, such as Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, and elsewhere, there are often family shrines in the homestead or behind the houses set apart for remembering the departed. Here, cola nuts, coffee beans, blood, beer, and other food items are placed. With words, watch this, with words to the effect that the food is being given to those who have departed, sometimes mentioning their names. In some areas, the places of food stuff is done daily, in other, only occasionally. So the ancestor Mbidi here, he points out some important things here that although he may not be speaking specifically about Kemet, but it includes Kemet.
That's right.
Because we know from the Hotep Dina soup formula, that's all up in there. The Hotep Dina soup formula is all up in here. In fact, you should get the book Libation by the great scholar, Dr. Nahusi. All of you should have that book. It's called Libation by Dr. Nahusi. He's an entire book about offerings, libations, etc. Classical book. So, anyone ever have cola nuts? Anyone who is a practitioner of Sheshe Legba, or what we may call, speak about as the Orisha tradition, at some point, you should have had cola nuts. Cola nuts are better. First time you get it, but it is good for you. Okay, those bitters is what you want. So these places that are set aside to feed, this is about feeding ancestors, about giving food to ancestors.
Sonjedi, I just want to break in and acknowledge that we have our elder Amoye in the chat. Welcome, Senator. Yes, do
Like,
yes.
Akma Ujawe. Ujawe.
There's also when you're finished with this thought, there's a question about. I'll highlight it again. Um, After you're finished with that, I just wanted to recognize Senamoye.
Okay.
Mhm.
And if you could read it because I can't see the
Oh, you
chat.
can't. Okay, it
All right.
says, on that note, I am curious about the meal to the ancestors. What do we do after? So I'm assuming after you've given the meal to the ancestors, what should people do after it's been given to the ancestors?
Typically, you eat it,
Mhm.
but more often than that, you give it as an offering to others in the community who may be less fortunate than yourself. Uh, so yes, or sometimes there's some things that like food items that are left on the ground outside. If you do it that way, you allow nature to partake. Um,
Okay.
but if it's food, then like on a plate, etc., then after you have given it spiritually, and this is something I'm going to touch on later on in the presentation,
Mhm.
uh, and then you partake of it physically because spiritually it has been consumed.
Mhm.
All right, so
Thank you.
uh, all the family shrines are in the homestead or behind houses. So today, behind churches, some traditional churches, uh, they'll have what cemeteries behind the church, which that structure is is reflected here because that's a place of ancestors. Now, of course, people may treat it slightly different, but in Africa, you have more of a holistic involvement here. Okay, so the effective food for the departed and their name. So we know the Hotadina Sut, the person's name is given. So we'll get back into that. We'll get into that further along. So now let's look at pyramid text. So this is an example of how spiritually the king in Kemet is given provisions, given food. Okay. So this is pyramid text of Wanasa or Unas, and the antechamber, south wall. So antechamber, like an upper chamber, if you will, south wall. And this in the image you see, this is actually the antechamber south wall. So I had to screenshot it and literally put it there. And as I always say, how do we know that this is Unas? Because we could look inside the Shinwa and we can read the text. It is read from right to left in this particular case. And we see his name in almost every single column here, right there inside of the Shinwa. So that's how we know that this is Wanasa. Um, Although I did not specifically section out the text that reflects the quote, but this is the south wall antechamber of his tomb, of his pyramid, excuse me. Technically, that's the same, it means the same thing actually, but all right. Sustenance belongs to the king's morning meal. So this is your breakfast. This is reflective of the king's living day, what the king does daily, what you do every day. Plenty belongs to the king's evening meal. Famine will not have power over the king's life. Conflagration will be far removed from the king. The king lives on your bounty. He has daily abundance of your abundance, O Ra. So the king takes part of the same meal that Ra takes part of.
Mhm.
The interesting thing is, so sustenance, plenty. Now, even though sustenance is at the beginning of the sentence and you're supposed to capitalize the first letter, um, it is a proper noun. Just like the word plenty, the reason why that is capitalized because it is a proper noun. African people, we pretty much see the divine in everything.
Mm-hmm.
So sustenance is a deity itself.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of having sustenance is a spirit. Plenty, having abundance, conceptually is a deity, if you will. It itself is a spirit. So the spirit, sustenance, the name of this spirit is called sustenance. The name of this spirit is called plenty. And that spirit belongs to the king, the Nisubiti, the double king. Interesting. I'm learning more and more how, at least for the Fulbe or Fulani, they eat breakfast and then they eat at dinner. They don't really do like the lunch thing. So I found that interesting that in this passage, it says the morning meal and the evening meal. It doesn't say anything about a lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that in a few other places in the pyramid text, in other areas as well. So I found that commonality. So we can think, do we really need more than 2 meals a day, like large meals a day? So we can look at how people are eating. In fact, the great scholar Robin Walker, who's the author of the book When We Ruled, you should all have that book. He discusses how during the period of the Songhai Empire, how we have records of such detail even to how they had their daily meals, and that they only did 1 or 2 meals a day. So he pointed out that this is calorie restricted diets. Calorie restricted diets. So we know that when we overeat, we have, issues with our weight. We have cardiac and heart problems, diabetes, all kinds of things that go wrong from overeating. So many of us who are listening to this program, have some type of awareness of how our diets affect our lives, and have taken steps to make those positive changes. Or some of us were even born into it. But here we go back to ancient Kemet. We see 2 meals. We can assume here 2 meals a day.
Mm-hmm. Calorie
restricted diet. Okay, so this is the text of Pepi. Antechamber, east wall. We look at the image on the right. We know that this is Pepi because we can read the text, so we can see his name, Pepi. Now, there's Pepi the first and there's Pepi the second. Now, Pepi the second is Neferkara Pepi. So we know that this is not Pepi the second because you don't have Neferkara there. So this is Pepi the first. So this is a section from out his text. All right. So now we're going to read these quotes here, and then we'll look at some of the transliteration of the meta nature. So this is a translation by 2 different authors. The top one here, this is by James P. Allen in 2005, Ancient Egyptian Pyramid Text. And the one on the bottom is translated by Raymond O. Faulkner, which is, of course, older. So I want you to see the two variations of the same text. So recitation. So many of you who have studied meta nature, when it says recitation, it means words spoken. So that is Jed Medu. Words spoken, or words to be recited, words to be spoken. So you don't just read these things, you say it out loud. So I'll read both. James P. Allen's translation. Greetings, sustenance. Greetings, abundance. Greetings, grain. Greetings, liquid. Greetings, you gods who lay a meal for the sun and food from the sustenance in the great immersion. May you let this Mary Ra eat from the great immersion. May you let this Peppy eat from the sun's leftovers, for I will sit on the sunlight's chair. Now for Faulkner's translation. Hail to you, food. Hail to you, abundance. Hail to you, grain. Hail to you, flour. Hail to you, you gods who lay a meal before Ra, who, ... which food, who are on the great flood. I shall eat of that which Ra bites, being seated on the throne of the sunlight. So again, sustenance or abundance or sustenance or food is a deity. It is a spirit. It is both physical and symbolic. It is microscopic and is macroscopic all at once. Greetings, abundance. So what's happening here? You are speaking to your food. You're speaking to your food. You are having a conversation with the sustenance that goes into your body, that feeds your spirit, that keeps you alive. This is a relationship. So when with African concepts of environment, our reality, etc., we know that everything has a spirit, some type of life, some movement and origin, etc., from which it comes and which it develops. And everything deserves some type of agency. So as you can see, the food has agency here because you are speaking to it. You are greeting your food. You are respecting that which gives you life. You are speaking to grain. Grain, hail to you, greetings to you. I come before your face. I'm facing you. Let's go to the transliteration up top. So, see if can you see my mouse here, my cursor?
Yes.
Okay. So, do I? So we know in Nazareth. So many of you have used, or utilized, or heard in Nazareth. So it's usually translated as greetings. It can be translated as hail to you, but in a more literal sense, it's I consult before your face, if you will. So this is an archaic greeting that now is used in ritual and used for deities. Whenever you find statements, phrases that are used primarily for deities or in ritual, you can pretty much guess that this is something that's ancient, if you will, that it was been around for so long that they had to, if you will, fossilize it, if you will, to preserve it, especially when it falls out of use in day-to-day conversation, but it's used for ritual, is usually something that was ancient prior to the first time you see it in writing, and then they needed to preserve it. So it is perhaps something that was used in ritual or with an oracle, if you will, on a greeting an oracle, but that's another conversation for another time. So now it becomes a way of greeting the divine, greeting spirit, or even perhaps even a king, if you will, but primarily for spirit. So and that's an act who. So and I'm not going to go through all of them, but Anazarak, who? So who was a word for food, sustenance? Anazarak, ba, or beha, abundance. Anazarak, neper, or nepera, grain. Sek, liquid. We already know Necharu, and that's her chenu, the natural chenu, not natural, but natural chenu, because this is a plural. So just as a grammatical tidbit, remember everyone, we cannot say Necharak in every single instant. And Necharak only goes towards a male entity. It is improper to say a Nazarek Aset. Okay. I would never I'm not going to greet my mother or speak by my mother and call her he. Okay. Because it's grammatically incorrect. I call my mother she. When you're speaking about a population, you say us, we, them, etc. Plural. So, and if I wanted to say that I'm greeting all set, I would have to say, and that's her etcha. And that's her etcha. So that is the proper pronoun for a female. In this case, chenu. And that's her chenu, necharu. So you're speaking about a collective, a group, plural. And that's her chenu, necharu, ipu. So now you're saying greetings, you gods, or you necharu, if you will. All right. So I have an alternative. So at the bottom, hopefully you can see that's an adaptation. So you can take this, you can use this if you like, in your own prayer. So this is my gift to you. So I modified it slightly. So when you are at the table, you can say, homage to you, food, homage to you, abundance, homage to you, grains. You can also put in there homage to you, fruits, homage to you, vegetables, okay? Homage to you, drinks. Okay, I put drinks instead of liquids because we usually don't say I'm drinking liquids. We usually say I'm drinking drinks or juices. You can say juices if you want. Greetings to you, O Neteru, who lays a meal for Ra and food from the great flood, or you can say food from Nun if you like. I, or if you're in a collective, we shall eat that which Ra eats. Dua Neter, you say that 4 times. Okay. 4 times be complete. 4 is your 4 points of a square, which is complete. 360 degrees, which is by degree equivalent to a circle. So that's why we do 4 times. So, or you can do a Nazarak food, a Nazarak abundance, right? A Nazarak grain, a Nazarak drinks, a Nazarak vegetables, fruits, greetings to you, or you say a Nazarak chenu, necharu, homage to you, O necharu, who lays a meal for Ra and food from the great flood, or Nun. We shall eat that which Ra eats. Dua necher, dua necher, dua necher, dua necher. And then you can eat. So the pyramid text is a formula, actually, because they're used and reused and can be slightly modified with each pyramid. It's what we find in pyramid text studies, if you will. So you readapt the African concept of giving agency to your food, respecting your food, and setting the tone for you to receive the sustenance. All All right, let's go to our next slide here. Here's a few terms for food. The image at the top, that is from Egypt. The one at the bottom is Senegal. The top is from modern day Egypt, Kemet, and then the bottom is an image of we see some sisters eating together, doing communal eating in Senegal. Terms for food. So we have Abet, food, provisions. Aku, loaves, food, like loaves of bread. Hu, food, or Hawe, more likely Hawe, food. And we saw that word earlier from the pyramid text in our previous slide. Shabu, meals, food. Now, these are a few terms. There's more words for food. We did see Wenemu. That was one word. There's also Jefau. That's word. We can even say Hetepu as a word for food. Food offerings, if you will. Go through a few. Now, let's take a look at this stela here. So the stela of Jet Consue Wasank. Consue Iwasank. So when we look at this image, you see this offering table here. So this would actually be a circular table. Circular. All right, this is a kaut table. You can see all the food items. You see vessels for drinks. She's pouring water, libation. We see some grapes. You see breads, some spices. We see plants, vegetables. In other words, we have how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 columns. So we have 8 lines here reflecting each of these columns. So we're gonna read through this. Have the transliteration there. No, we have a few scribes in the building, so y'all can check my translation and transliteration. I did modify the original translation. I'll explain that in a second. So this is what's called a retrograde text. So although it's read, the words themselves are read right to left, but the columns are ordered left to right. So it's called retrograde text. Starting with the far left column, we're going to read right to left. So this is an offering which the king gives to, so we know that's Hotep Dinasut, to Ra Harukuti, the great god or the great Necher, Lord or Naba of heaven. So here's my transliteration. Heru Akuti, Necher Ea, Neb Pet. That he may give, so that's DF, he give, an invocation offering, so it's Predit Karu, consisting of offerings and foods to Osiris. So Hetepu Na Wasiru or Wasaru. Lady of the house. Now we're on the third column here, right here. Lady of the house, the noble woman, Jet Kansu. Now it cuts off there, right about here. So the scribes in the house, you can check my accuracy there. So Jet Kansu, so here it's Nebet Per. Now, of course, here the T is not there, but we understand it's implied because we're speaking about a woman. So Nebet Per, or Peri or Pero, lady of the house, meaning she's the manager of the house. She's an overseer of the house. Shepset, so that's noble woman. That's right here, Shepset. Jed Consue here, and then we go into the next column 4. So EUS Ankh. So they abbreviated here, so you just have the relief and the photo cloth, and then we have the Ankh. At first, it's maybe a little hard to see, but there's a crack right here, so we have to account for that crack, that damage. So that's your Ankh. Okay, yes, Ankh and Ma'akaru. So where it says deceased here, that's the translation that was given, but it should say true of voice. So it's Ma'akaru. So Sat Hemnecher in Iman-Ra. So the daughter, so we know Sat, of the priest, Hemnecher, servant of the Necher, of Amun-Ra. Na Amun-Ra. 5. Right here, we begin here. So this is king of the gods, the king of the Neteru, master of the secrets of the garments of, so we stop there, Nisut Neteru, Hari Seshata. So here you have Ampu. This is what they call third intermediate period. So this is the 22nd dynasty. It looks like Pet that the scribes are using in place of the coffin that Ampu usually sits on. So this is usually used for the Hari Sesheta. So you can look that up in the Garden text. In Shesu in. So we know that's garments, linen right here. We also see that in the Hotadina formula as well. So I added nobles of the gods, if you will, Shepsu Nu Neteru. The original translation that the author gave was garments of the gods. I added nobles, garments of the nobles of the gods, mainly because of this. Now, I may have, what I could see, it kind of looked like a folded cloth. And if not, then I don't know what to tell you. But we know that this sign here is used for ancestors. It's also used for Shepsu or nobles. So I'm willing to modify that if someone could maybe interpret that better, if you will. Because we have the Shesu, and then on both sides of the Shesu, you have the preposition na, or in and in of. So master the secrets of the garments, but then you have this next preposition of, and then I see this here. And then we have the preposition nu. We know that's plural. So, which means that the preceding word or noun has to be plural. And then we see Neteru here, the 3 strokes. So that's why I translated it that way. As for the scribes, okay, 7. So 7 and 8. So noble one, Saru Jehuti. So they'll say Sir Jehuti. I'll say Saru Jehuti. Since we're talking about a person, this is her father. So I've added the W there. Since that would be a participle. Noble one of Jehuti, or yes, so noble one of Jehuti. It's her father. All right. So essentially, this is what? An offering that's being given on her behalf. So symbolically, she is giving offerings to Ra, Harakuti. So even in the spirit realm, we are doing what? We are sharing food, giving food so that the ancestor in a divine form of Harakuti can be fed and continue to live. Okay. All right, just some last images. So this is the tomb of, again, Lakin and Tawi. So look at all this food here, the different vessels all over. You see great, we see different fruits. We see papyri. We see flowers, lotus flowers. That they're having a banquet here, and you can see how it's set up. We also see it here. So this is a mark, comes from a marketplace in Aswan, and I know it has the watermarks in the back, but this shot here is just profound, so I had to use it. You see how everything is laid out, ready to go. It's
Beautiful.
communal eating, just like here, everything's laid out, ready to go. Here, laid out, ready to go. That's why I had to have some Ethiopian food earlier, and we did communal eating, laid out, ready to go, just like this. See all these bowls of food and what sustenance, provisions, shabu, jefau, shabu, jefau. Yeah. This is a Fulani or a Fulbe sister. Looks like some type of a grain inside of a bowl there. Food. This is a dish from Sierra Leone. Are y'all hungry? Man,
Man,
this
listen.
is good stuff. All right. There we go. That's our presentation. I'm going to stop sharing. All right.
Sanjay, that was amazing. That I feel like we just went back in time and we were able to see how we as African people continue to communicate with each other in what I like to look at as a cyclical, like a circle. And everything that we did revolved around family, community, and a cycle. And seeing the communal eating with all of the circles. I love math and geometrical things, and so that's kind of how I see stuff. And that's just kind of what I was seeing, how I was experiencing all that, with all the vibrant colors. That was amazing. I really hope that, you know, the people who are here on, with Tuesday Talk right now. I've had other shows where we talked about slave food. I've had another edition of Tuesday Talk where, we talked about being vegan and you could see fresh food. And although we have clear evidence that our ancestors ate meat, it wasn't slave food. It wasn't contaminated. It wasn't something that did harm to the body. It wasn't something that, you know, would, would make us sluggish and unable to really think. We were also connected to our food, you know. So I one of the things that I'm hoping is that we can take what you've learned today, even if it's the visual, the beauty, the holistic component and the natural component to the food, and think about some of the other Tuesday talks you've had about food. It is so important to understand, just like what Sanjay was saying, that food is sustenance, it's life, it's divine, it is a deity. It is in alignment. It is in line with Ma'at. It is Ma'at. It's what we've discussed before here in Tuesday Talk. It's what you've heard Sanjay talk about in other Tuesday Talks. And it's important to reconnect and be practical in everything that we do as it pertains to reclaiming our paradigm as African people and reclaiming our customs and our traditions and our perspective and the literal functional practical things that we do every day. So, it'd be interesting for me to see in the chat what it is that you're going to do different, that is different than what you do now. What are you going to do after we just listened to and saw everything that Sanjeti has given to us? One thing I'm going to do is try to have more communal eating. Try to have more, um, food that connects us to what it is that we do. Okay, and that is more in our paradigm, in our perspective. I hope this is making sense, and that
Yeah.
I'm not just
Um,
rambling.
no,
We
not at all. I mean, you're processing. I mean, I'm
right.
processing. Um, if I even seen well, it was a statement in the chat about seeing or not seeing meat, if you will.
Mm,
Um, so there were images of birds.
mm,
So in ancient Kemet, they did eat birds. And again, and that's if that person was speaking about um, the Kemetic images. Uh, some of the other dishes, people, in West Africa do eat meat, beef. Some people eat pork, so that, we have to be real about that. Um, some places, Central Africa, they eat pork. So remember, we have, just like in scholarship, we have to have honest, objective scholarship.
that's
Um,
right.
so here we have to have, honest, objective scholarship. So as as the community, calls me Seba, that means that's scholarship. So I have to be honest about the information and not try to bend it, to make a false picture.
Right.
So it doesn't mean you have to eat meat, but it means that we can't be dishonest. Say, oh, all African people were vegetarians. Like that's
Because
not a
that's not
reality.
true.
That's not a reality, and
Right.
we don't have to do that. If we choose to only eat plant-based foods, then we eat plant-based foods. It doesn't mean we have to, retrograde that idea onto the past or on the people living today. Okay? So, and remember, even earlier, that when you go into anthropology and the diets of ancient people, we ate fish, okay? And it's the eating of fish that helped to propel our brain development. So, we're not committing a sin against the creator of the universe by eating flesh, okay? That's not a reality. Um, It just means that if you choose to eat a plant-based diet, which is healthy in most cases, then that's what we do. Um, there are diet restrictions. So even when you go to in Kemet, in the Temple of Esna, the Temple of Esna, ESNA, um, there's there's rules on diet restrictions before you engage in your priestly duties, your seasonal priestly duties, such as one should not eat certain foods, especially certain meats, 3 days, 9 days, even more before priestly service duties because of a cleaning out purification period. So now, of course, think about this in a practical sense. If you're eating a whole lot of hamburgers and things like that,
Mm.
reality, you're probably going to have a lot of gas. So, you know, you don't want to be in a temple and your stomach say, "Look, don't eat these things before you start your priestly duties." Now, again, I'm speculating, but trying to think in a practical sense. Uh, which is why in many religious services, different religious services, it's rude to pass gas. Okay, because it's flagellants. It's putting evil spirits in the air, if you will. Okay, because that's what it is. It's evil spirits. Anything that disturbs your peace or
Hmm.
gives you like you know, is something that distracts you from your focus on what's positive and the ritual and ceremony. So you can't be in there, singing and celebrating, or it's supposed to be in quiet solitude, and someone lets off because they were eating beef, and whatnot. So I'm just thinking about it in a practical sense.
Sonjedi, can you also mention and talk about us eating pork? Did we eat pork? Was it shunned as Kemetic people? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So many places in Africa, people eat pork. So let's put that on the table. There's a lot of people on the continent that eat pork. Now, those who are more the Abrahamic faith today, most of them don't. Okay. Now, in ancient Kemet, where it's possible where the restriction of eating pork may have come from, or at least how those who adhere to Abrahamism picked it up from. So in Kemet, I've never seen pig on the offering table, because everything you see in the offerings, people eat that. That's in the diet. Okay. But you will not see, at least I've never seen, a pig ever put on the offering table. Now, there is an account from, I believe it's Herodotus, of in the city of Jeddu, Ranu. Maybe you could correct me on this, Ranu. The degree is called Mendes. I believe that's Jeddu. Yeah, if you could check that. Make sure I'm correct on that. They had an annual festival where they would consume a pig. Okay. Now, this was in northern Kemet in the Delta, like by the Delta region. So it was localized, but it was not nationalized. Mm-hmm. So, and remember, we're talking about a whole country here. This is an entire country. So everybody and everywhere is not eating the exact same way, if you will. So people in the north may have, some different plants and herbs they're eating than people in the north. Okay. Or people in the middle regions of Kemet where Mennefer is. Mennefer is in the middle regions, just a little south of the apex of the delta. So, and in the mythology, when you go into the tomb, I believe it's an Abuju tomb or Abydos tomb, where you see the image of a black pig being beaten by a baboon.
Oh, goodness.
Like, get away from the throne of Asar. It's like by steps, like beating a black pig. There's even an account by Herodotus. Again, Herodotus is like 6th century BCE. So we're talking about like the 500s, where he described a native Kemetic African man, where a pig was running, and then it like ran into him, bumped into him. So he was so distraught that the pig touched him, that he ran to the river and jumped in and washed him to purify himself because the pig touched him. Okay, and this is an observation by the ancient geographer Herodotus. Okay.
Poor little piggies get a bad rap.
Yeah. There was something else on that too. Oh, so when you go into the Pertum Heru and you go to chapter, so there's chapter 42, and then after chapter 42, there's what's called a rubric. So a rubric written in red ink by the scribe is an instructional piece. Okay, it gives instructions for the 121st chapter, where we get our 42 declarations of innocence, if you will. Okay. There's also a set of 36. So usually we hear 42. There's a set of 36 that actually comes before that. You don't find it in the Papyrus of Ani. You find it in other papyri. So there's a set of 36, and then there's a set of 42. And remember, the 125th chapter it's like an entire chapter before you even get to the 42. So you got to read all that first. So the rubric, the instructions for entering the hall of the double truth, Ma'ati, is, I'm going to try to go from memory here. It says that one who enters this hall of truth will come pure, meaning you showered, you bathed, okay? Pure and clad in white linen, meaning you bathed yourself, more than likely with like natron, similar to baking soda, if you will. You wash off water and all that kind of stuff. You put on white linen, and you put on coal and myrrh oil. It mentions specifically myrrh. You put that on, however you do it, and you enter a space that has not been trodden by a two-hooved animal. What is a two-hooved animal? Pigs. Okay. Pigs. What other animals have hooves? Cattle have hooves as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But that would include pigs are not to enter the sacred space. I mean, I'm even tempted to, let me see if I can pull out I can read it actually. Yeah. So I'll just read it. We like to go directly to the source, right? So I'll do y'all justice and read it for you. I want to give you the full shebang. I looked at this in
While you're finding that, Senamoye said, yes, there was one area in the Delta where they ate pork and raised pigs. People outside of their community shunned them and would not marry them.
Yes. So dua for that. Ranu, Sesh or Ranu. So when you go back to the text of Esna in the Esna temple, it said, watch this, that a priest is not to give his son or daughter over to the son or daughter of a pig herder. Let me say it again. It says that a priest, you should not give your son or daughter over to the son or daughter of a pig herder. So that's how much they disdained pigs. I found it. All right. So here's the rubric to chapter 125. It says, the correct procedure in this hall of justice, one shall utter this chapter pure and clean and clad in white garments and sandals, painted with black eye paint and anointed with myrrh. Thou shalt be offered to him meat, poultry, incense, beer, bread, herbs. When you have put this written procedure on a clean floor of ochre overlaid with earth, upon which no, swine or small cattle have trodden. As for him who makes this writing, he shall flourish, and his children shall flourish, etc., etc., etc. So that's even more clarity. It says, on a floor of ochre overlaid with earth, upon which no swine or small cattle have trodden. So I hope that at least someone addresses the question of pork.
Right. And that was during those times before we had bioengineered everything, before before animals were tortured, and before they lived in slop, and before they had all these hormones and chemicals. I mean, before they were just generally manipulated to not even really truly be completely food. So imagine what we're eating now. So, and this is a little bit of a sidebar that I wanted to focus on, because part of what we'd like is to break all of the chains of enslavement and continuing to eat the food, that type of food shows a bit of a mental enslavement that still goes on when that's something that you know better than now and have other options, but still choose to do that. So that's why I wanted to pull that out. So, you know, as far as the bulk of what we got tonight, we had some first source prayers over food. We have a different perspective of food from our paradigm. Let me define those two terms. A paradigm is like a house, if you will, a structure, okay, in which there are rules for that upholds that structure. A perspective is like in a room in the house. That's the view that you have. Okay. So if you're in somebody else's house, looking out somebody else's window, then you just ain't gonna get what you're supposed to get. You're gonna get something that is not for you. And in this case, something that is bad for you. So from our paradigm, our rules and customs and traditions, our house, we have a perspective, okay, the way that we look at food. Food is divine. Food is communal. Food is to be shared. Food is sustenance. Food is to be offered to our ancestors so that our ancestors may live. That symbolic act is then turned into something practical because you eat it, someone in your family eats it, or it's given to someone who needs the food. Nothing is wasted. Okay. And that is what I got while I was moderating and looking in the chat and making sure everything was running smoothly. So we also got some direct prayers. We got some sources for some prayers, people. I need y'all to run this back. I need y'all to run this back and make sure that you have what you need to do what? To be practical and functional in practicing so that you can stay in the right paradigm. Our paradigm is the dopest. I mean, come on, is super dope when you do it. All right. However, you, or I should say, at the same time, you are given practical tools to do it. It's just not talk. We have a master scribe. We have sources and references. We have examples and ways and things that you guys can take and go do immediately. Scribe Sonjedi, I want to thank you so much. When we prep for Tuesday Talk and Sonjedi and I, get a wrap on and talk and stuff, I'll be learning in our prep session, and it's a lot of fun. He's an extremely busy man, and so when he carves out time to come teach us in the dopest way that he does, we need to respect and honor that as well. He doesn't do this for money, but needs money to do it. And I have posted up his Cash App, which is $Sonjedi, and PayPal, which is a little bit too tiny for me to read with this bright light in my face. But I have it in the chat, you guys. Oh, wait, here it is. It's easier to read. The PayPal is S as in scribe, N as in Nancy, J as in jet, D I.ifatunde8@gmail.com. Ifatunde, IFATUNDE8 at gmail.com. We got to show our brother some love because y'all love him. Y'all ask for him all the time. I get him. He comes and he brings it all the time for us to learn and really to give us the sources we need to continue to do our own research and stuff. And little on me, my Cash App is Yoga Girl Sai. Okay. So I hope that you really enjoyed tonight's Tuesday Talk. I'm going to check the chat for any more questions. I think he answered all of them. We have Fred Bantu, meat with ceremonial. Otherwise, you wouldn't have livestock animals. You wouldn't have what? Animals weren't herded for slaughter. Main diet was grains, fruits, vegetables, and legumes. Well, we right, most certainly didn't eat as much meat as people eat nowadays, but we did eat meat because our offerings were eaten and consumed by the humans here. So I hope I read your comment in the right spirit. Go ahead, Sonjedi.
Yeah. For the most part, you're going to have mostly, grains, vegetables. You see like onions in there, breads, and then you can have a little bit of meat in there, but it's mostly grains,
Mm-hmm.
vegetables, fruits. So,
Sonjedi, do you know? We have a question. Was the domestic pig invented or maybe bred into what we have today from an ancient pig?
not that I know of. See, all domesticated animals are. I mean, domestication is a human invention, right?
Right, right, right.
So, in that sense, yeah. But as far like genetically, if that's the context of the question, um, dogs, for example, like modern day dogs were technically bred from wolves.
Mm,
So the dogs you see today, over centuries and centuries, human beings have selected specific wolves to breed together, and that's how you get the modern dog.
right, right.
Now, as far as the pig, I don't know. I mean, from the images from tombs and others, they pretty much look the same. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm,
so now, if you mean genetically, I don't know. Um, if it's again, I don't know the context, but if it's in the Nation of Islam type context, that's symbolic. That's not literal. If it's cat, a rat, and a dog together, no. But if that's the context of the question, but domesticated, remember domestication, and remember is a human invention.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
so you could have some behavioral changes, just like house cats. Okay, house cats are usually more plumped, than wild cats. Uh, so there are some
Mhm.
changes there. Their behavior, may not be as aggressive. Maybe I'm not sure, but hopefully I'm addressing the sister's question.
I think so. I think I agree with you. The act of domestication in and of itself is a modern day invention, as far as I understand. Or
Well,
not
it's
modern day,
ancient. Yeah,
human,
domestication of
human.
animals is thousands of
I'm
years old.
sorry. Yeah, let me correct that. Not modern day, but human. Biogenetically engineering food, to my understanding, is modern day, and creating food, like making food in
Um,
a lab, that type of stuff,
well,
is
yeah, in a
most
lab. Yeah, in a
in a
lab.
right is most certainly something that is. I wouldn't even consider that food if it doesn't come from the earth. What is it? So
Well,
I hope that question was answered. Go ahead.
um, well, honestly, I know that in a, we will make sure that things that are artificially manufactured gets relegated to the category of bad for you kind of thing. Um, for the most part, okay. Artificially manufactured food technically is still food because you can live off of it. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to have the best quality of health. No.
Right.
But technically, it is food because you can still get calories, carbohydrates, proteins from it, albeit some of it is denatured. Okay. Like protein powder um, is, denatured technically. You mix it in water and then drink it down.
Hmm.
Your body, your that protein is composed of the amino acid chains. Okay. So when you actually eat food, you know, it be it let's say beans and rice. So beans and rice together is a complete protein.
Hmm.
Or if you eat some chicken or quail or goat, okay, because in Africa people eat goat. um,
Right. Right.
when you eat those things, it goes through the process of breaking apart the proteins down to amino acids, et cetera, naturally. But when you do protein drinks, it's already broken apart. So then it bypasses some of the process. And, you're essentially long term, you could be messing with your genes technically. Um, Not to the point where you're going to grow an extra arm. Okay. So sometimes, again, I get it. Sometimes we go to these extremes, like, oh, don't eat that, like you're not going to die, right? If you drink a protein shake, you know. So again, unless you grow an arm out of your shoulder, but you know, but the best diet is always natural. Um,
That's right.
I mean that's across the board. every level of research, to the layman, to the most professional, knowledgeable scientist. Natural diet is always best.
This is true. This is true. Well, I hope that question was answered, especially in the spirit in which it was asked. So I just want to thank everyone for coming on to Tuesday Talk. And I want to thank Sonjedi for giving the people what we asked for. I was really excited about this. I think it's important to understand that, you know, we had our own customs in the everyday. It wasn't always these huge ceremonies that we see that are so beautiful and so ornate, but just in the everyday, we had our way that is still something that reflects the divine, contains the divine, and has family and um, humanity, recognizing our humanity within it and everything that we did. Okay. So with that, I want to say thank you to everyone who came. Thank you to Sanjeti. I appreciate and thank you for your continued support with Tuesday Talk. And I'll see you next Tuesday.
Okay. Shimon Tep.
Mwah.